Hello friends, welcome to Chandu HR Studio. Please watch full of my video and share, subscribe, and if you like, comment also. Thank you, and let's get into the video. Today we are going to discuss about labor laws with practical explanation, part 1. Before going to start this video, you would like to have with you these three items like wearing headphones, notebook and pen to write something if you are interested and if you get remember in future also. So before going to start my video, I would like to ask one question, a small question. Who is in this picture and what his major contributions in India and for Indian especially workforce? So answer in the comment box by hashtag Chandu HR Studio. Answer for question 1. The right answer will be revealed in my next video. These four topics which I want to cover in this video, part 1, these are the outlines. First one is labor legislations in India, concept and origin, framing of labor legislations, labor legislation classifications, and new amalgamation of labor laws. So let's begin the show. Labor legislation in India, concept and origin. So before going to start, what is law? Law means a body or group of a combined set of rules that made to follow for a systematic living. Law is inevitable everywhere in human race, from ancient to modern. Law can be classified in two major parts, act and rule. So with this para, I would like to say that law is everywhere. Even without a paper or without a document, some of our ancient great grandfathers are embedded with the law. Like what we called in village, there are some rules which made pertaining to that village and their administration like that. So what is act? Act means what to do and what not to do. An act is a description of various sections and regulations that what we need to do and what we not to do. And rule means how to and when to do it. So act says what to do and the rule says how to do. So these two classes are interlinked with any law. Without these two, the law cannot be enforced by any of the government. So when it comes to labor is one of the natural resources in the world, like capital and law, what we have discussed in economics subject also. But labor is very peculiar than the other two. Labor laws are emerged when the employers try to restrict the powers of workers and minimum rights of them. So when we discuss about the ancient labor movement and workforce related issues, there is no scope for any development of any workforce. Labor treated as a slavery, a bonded. Master can deprive or use the labor as a slavery, and they will do whatever they want to do with the labor, whoever worked under him. In earlier days, labor or workman treated as a slavery or bonded, and there was no scope for any improvement of them. Laborers are treated as untouchable or deprived section of people. Sweating to labor will earn profit to the master or owner. His conditions led to a chaotic weather in industries, and at that point of time, government interventions came to force, and they are going to rejuvenate this system of master and labor, owner or slavery type of relationship to a systematic way of getting things done. That is for labor legislation, and at that time labor legislation was born. When it comes to Indian labor legislation system, the three major contributors of our labor system is British rulers. Of course, most of the labor legislations are enacted at the time of British government in India, and International Labour Organization, who started in 1919. It was the only association who is still live even after his parent organization was vanished. League of Nations, what do you call it? And another one, and now present continuing, our Indian Constitution. These are the three major contributors of Indian labor legislation. India's labor policy is mainly based on labor laws. The labor laws of independent India derive their origin, inspiration, and strength partly from the views expressed by important nationalist leaders during the days of national freedom struggle, partly from the debates of the Constituent Assembly, and partly from the provisions of the Constitution and the international conventions and recommendations. So in this para you can get to know that labor policy of India was derived mainly from the freedom struggle. So you know, we fought for our freedom around 250 years. Then the relevance of the dignity of human labor and the need for protecting and safeguarding the interest of labor as human beings has been enriched in the chapter 3 and chapter 4 of the Indian Constitution. So what is this chapter 3 and chapter 4 of the Indian Constitution? Chapter 3 discussed about the fundamental rights of a citizen of India. So whoever living in this India and born and brought up in the India have some rights, like Article 16, 19, 23 and 24. These four articles from the chapter 3 fundamental rights are the key basics of the Indian Labour Association. And chapter 4. What is the chapter 4? Chapter 4 is the directive principles of state policy. Directive principles means the Indian Constitution will give certain directives, like what you called cautions, and directive instructions to the various governments or whoever ruling party or government will come. They have to take in care of the some of the directive instructions which were made in chapter 4 of the Indian Constitution, like article 39, 41 and 42, 43, 43A and 54 of the Indian Constitution. These two chapters are the main basic of the Indian labor legislation formation. Okay, the labor laws were also influenced by important human rights and the conventions and standards that have emerged from the United Nations. So United Nations is the international organization deals with the various sector of the human life. In that United Nations, for our labor community, we have ILO. So this include right to work of one's choice, right against discrimination, prohibition of child labor, just and human conditions of work, social security, protection of wages, redressal of grievances, right to organize and form trade unions, collective bargaining, and participation in management. So these are the main clauses we have taken and ratified in our India from the United Nations recommendations. Our labor laws have also been significantly influenced by the deliberations of various sessions of the Indian Labour Conference and the International Labour Conferences. Labor legislation have also been shaped and influenced by the recommendations of the various national committees and commissions, such as the first National Commission on Labour in 1969 under the chairmanship of Justice Gajendra Gadkar, and National Commission on Rural Labour in the year of 1991, and the second National Commission on Labour 2002 under the chairmanship of Sri Ravindra Verma, etc. And the judicial pronouncements on labour related matters specifically pertaining to minimum wages, bonded labor, child labor, contract labor, etc. How you frame the labor laws? Not only labor laws, for framing of any law, there are some certain system framed by the Indian Constitution. As per the need and regulate of some conditions, central or state governments will prepare a bill and introduce in the Houses of Parliament or various state assemblies. The same process for a mentioned in Indian Constitution will use for the framing of labor legislation also. Three types of classification in the framing of law is there. One is introduction of bill. Any member, either in any houses, can introduce a bill, and there was certain stages of discussions for that bill. Then it will go to process of act. After act, rules will be formed. So these are the main three stages of any law framing. Under the Constitution of India, labor is a subject in the concurrent list, where both the central and state governments are competent to enact the legislations. As a result, a large number of labor laws have been enacted catering in different aspects of labor, namely occupational health, safety, employment, training of apprentices, fixation, review and revision of minimum wages, mode of wages, payment of compensation to workmen who suffer injuries as a result of accident or causing death or disablement, bonded labor, contract labor, women labor and child labor, resolution and adjudication of industrial disputes. Provision of social security such as provident fund, employee state insurance, gratuity, provision of payment of bonus, regulating the working conditions of certain specific categories of workmen such as plantation labor, BD workers, etc. This is how we have a large number of labor legislations. As I mentioned earlier, that we have a huge number of labor laws which can be broadly divided into various types in my opinion. First one is divided by enforcement. Second one is divided by objective. So what is divided by enforcement? Divided by enforcement we can broadly classified into another four categories. First one is central government enacted and sole responsibility by the central government. So some acts will enacted by the central government and will enforced by the central government only. Second one is enacted and enforced by the both central and state government. In this context, both central and state government will enact and enforce the various labor legislations. Third one is enacted by central government and sole responsible to enforce by the state governments. Some point of labor laws are enacted by the central government and the administration and enforcement of that act will be responsible to the state governments only. So last classification is enacted and enforced by the various state governments separately. So some state governments, according to their conditions of work, nature of work, they have enacted so many legislations pertaining to their state only. So these are some examples of central government enacted and sole responsibility with the central government only. First one is the Employee State Insurance Act 1948. The second one, the Employees Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1952. The third one, the Mines Act 1952. And some more act also there. These are the main three acts which is covering more and more workforce. So what is second one? In the second classification we have n number of acts which enacted and enforced by both central and state government. First one is the Child Labor Prohibition and Regulation Act 1986. Second one, the Building and Other Construction Workers Regulation of Employment and Conditions of Services Act 1996. The Contract Labor Regulation and Abolition Act 1970. The Equal Remuneration Act 1976. The Industrial Dispute Act 1947. The Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act 1946. The Interstate Migrant Workman Regulation of Employment and Conditions of Services Act 1979. The Maternity Benefit Act 1961. The Minimum Wages Act 1948. The Payment of Bonus Act 1965. The Payment of Gratuity Act 1972. And the Payment of Wages Act 1936. The next classification is enacted by the central government and sole responsibility to enforce by state governments. So these are the act which enacted by the central government and administered by the state governments. The Employers Liability Act 1938, the Factories Act 1948, the Motor Transport Workers Act 1961, the Plantation Laborer Act 1951, the Trade Union Act 1926, the Employees Compensation Act 1923, the Employment Exchange Compulsory Notification of Vacancies Act 1959. The last classification is enacted and enforced by the various state governments for their respective conditions. Like Maharashtra and Odisha and some other states have enacted their separate labor legislation pertaining to their conditions and for the state itself only. Another broad classification is divided by the objective. First we have learned divided by the enforcement. Now we are going to discuss about divided by the objective. In this broad classification, there are around 7 various interlinked classifications are there. Laws related to industrial relations, laws related to wages, laws related to specific industries, laws related to equality and empowerment to women class, laws related to weaker section of employments, laws related to social security, laws related to employment and training. So when it comes to laws related to industrial relations, in the name itself it was there: Industrial Dispute Act, Industrial Employment and Standing Orders Act, Trade Union Act. When it comes to wages, Minimum Wages Act, Payment of Wages Act, Equal Remuneration Act, and Payment of Bonus Act. Laws related to specific industries: the Factories Act, the Mines Act, Building and Other Construction Workers Act, Interstate Migrant Workmen. Laws related to equality and empowerment to women classes. In this classification, some part of Equal Remuneration Act and Maternity Act will also comes under this class. Weaker section of employments like Unorganized Worker Social Security Act, Social Security Act, Payment, the Employee State Insurance Act, Employee Provident and Miscellaneous Provisions Act. Laws related to employment training means the Apprentice Act and Employment Exchange Compulsory of Notification Act. These are the main classifications of labor laws divided by the objective. Being a world largest democratic country and having largest young and working population, we need to strengthen our living and working conditions to cope up with recent trends in labor management and welfare of human beings. As a result of huge lack of labor laws and their various forms and registration will confuse in the modern working culture and having a chance to raise some loopholes also. So by considering all these impact as a developing nation and within a few years we can call as a developed country also, we need to combine the various laws into one major law. In this connection, central government in 2019 has taken a step forward to amalgamate various labor laws into 4 major classifications. What are these? So for any labor or workman or employee, whoever working in the working class or their respective industry, there is a only perception, maximum perception will be on wages, safety and working conditions and health of the welfare, health of the workman and his family, and social security. And what are the relations we have to follow in our industry? So these are the four major aspects for every workman or every employee will look after in their working life. So in this connection, the central government enacted the Code on Wages, the Act of 29 of 2019, the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code, the Act number 37 of 2020, the Code on Social Security, the Act number 36 of 2020, the Code on Industrial Relations, Act number 35 of 2020. The above changes will help us to understand and enforcement of various laws made us easy. So what comes under Code on Wages? Mainly four wage legislations comes under this Code of Wages. One is Payment of Wages Act 1936, Minimum Wages Act 1948, Payment of Bonus Act 1965 and Equal Remuneration Act 1976. In the Code of Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions, there are 13 laws and 622 section will be simplified and covered by just 134 sections, like Factories Act, CLRI, senior workers and laws related to occupational safety, health and working condition. It will now be mandatory for employees not to just provide a safe working environment, but also have to annual medical examination for all employees also. The code also says that women working in mines should be provided creches for children under the age of 6. So what comes under Social Security Code? The Employees Compensation Act 1923, the Employees State Insurance Act 1948, the Employees Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1952, the Employees Exchange Compulsory Notification of Vacancies Act 1959, the Maternity Benefit Act 1961, the Payment of Gratuity Act 1972, the Senior Workers Welfare Fund Act 1981, the Building and Other Construction Workers Cess Act 1996, the Unorganized Workers Social Security Act 2008. These are the social security legislations which comes under the Code of Social Security. What comes under Industrial Relations Code? The Industrial Relations Code Bill 2020 proposed for amalgamating, simplifying and rationalizing the three major acts. First one is the Trade Union Act 1926, the Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act 1946, the Industrial Dispute Act 1947. This code is to consolidate and amend the laws relating to trade unions, conditions of employment in industrial establishment or undertaking, investigation and settlement of various industrial disputes, and for matter connected therewith or incidental thereto. So we came to summary part. In this video, we have discussed what is the labor legislations in India, concept, origin, formation of labor legislations, historical background of labor legislation in India, various types of classifications of labor legislation, and new upcoming amendment in labor legislation pertaining to labor law codes. So by the end note with the Swami Vivekananda quote, I will end this video. Swami Vivekananda once said that we may read the books, hear lectures, and talk miles, but experience is the one teacher, the one eye opener. It is best as it is. We learn through smiles and tears we learn. Jai Hind. So I would like to dedicate my channel, my video and my upcoming whatever my development is there as a gratitude to my parents, family, friends and of course gurus without guru, who will become any